Welcome back to another custom campaign breakdown. This time, we are going to be looking into another great custom campaign, Daybreak. If we're talking about just presentation, this is one of the best maps on the workshop. Daybreak looks fantastic. The levels are well designed, and there are a ton of unique models. On the gameplay side, this campaign still doesn't let up. Daybreak also has some of the best Easter eggs I've seen from a custom map. You guys know the drill at this point, so without wasting any more time, let's break down the story behind Daybreak. The campaign starts off with the survivors on the roof of the Daybreak Hotel. A crashed helicopter can be seen on the same roof, and the survivors then talk to Nick about shooting the pilot. It's the standard setup for a Left 4 Dead campaign, but unlike the official Left 4 Dead maps that have you fighting through the alleyways of Pennsylvania or the bayous of Louisiana, Daybreak has you fighting the infected through the sunny streets of San Francisco. If you take a quick glance around the city, you can find many real-life landmarks. Some of these landmarks include the Trans-America Pyramid, the Lime Point Lighthouse, and obviously the Golden Gate Bridge. I'll be sure to point out these real-life locations as we go through the campaign, but for now, let's break down some wall graffiti found while walking down the stairs. Get out of the city. Use the bridge. We love you, Julia. They're going to bomb the whole city. Where did they come from? Hell. They're us. I had to shoot my own father. I want to go home. You can never go back. When you reach the first floor of the hotel and walk into this bathroom, you can find a pile of bodies and this piece of wall graffiti that reads as follows: "Nobody is going to save us." If you head into NoClip and head behind the hotel, you can find a poster that reads as follows: "Wanted for crimes against the laws of physics. If seen, contact the San Francisco Police Department." I don't recognize the face of this individual, so I'm unsure if this is another reference or an inside joke by the developer. Regardless, I think it's worth pointing out. Now let's move on. Before you reach the barricade, the survivors walk into a building, and inside one of the rooms, you find this: a bloody room full of gnomes. On the floor, you can find this piece of graffiti: "The gnomes are always watching." You can even pick up one of the gnomes and bring it with you. If you are at all familiar with this map, you'll know that this gnome is hiding many secrets, and we will get to that later in the video. For now, we're going to move on. Shortly after clearing the barricade, the survivors walk up the street, and on the left-hand side, you can walk into this building. Behind the glass doors are two dead tanks. It's unclear what killed these tanks and why their bodies are placed here, but again, it's definitely worth pointing out. Shortly after, the survivors walk into a building full of dead bodies. On the wall, you can find this piece of wall graffiti: "Seek refuge at the Palace Theater." You can also find an armored school bus surrounded by dead bodies, and after walking a little further, the survivors arrive at the Palace of Fine Arts, which is another real-life location found in San Francisco. While walking towards the palace, you can find this piece of graffiti on the ground: "Don't touch the water." The water may look shallow at a first glance, but don't be fooled. You will instantly die if you jump in. Before you reach the safe room, you can find two dead bodies and even more graffiti that reads as follows: "Their love will last forever. Only until the zombies got them, asshole." Now, let's move on to Chapter 2. Inside the safe room, you can find a map, along with this line of text: "Get to Fort Point. Stick to the shore." A red line is seen connecting the Palace of Fine Arts to the Fort Point historic site. The survivors who previously occupied the safe room tried to plan their route through the city. This is also the exact path the survivors take when playing through Chapter 2. Now, let's move on. This is a good time to point out one of this campaign's best features. While playing through this campaign, you can find many supercars with custom license plates. I'm personally not the biggest car guy, but it's still a very nice addition. The models for these supercars look amazing, and there are a lot of them in this campaign. While walking through the city, the survivors come across a military outpost. Before you head inside, you can find this piece of wall graffiti written above the door: "Overrun, new military evac point." An arrow is seen pointing towards the coast. Inside the building, you can find mounted machine guns and a ton of supplies. Shortly after, the survivors come across a house. You can find this piece of graffiti written above the door: "Dead End." Inside of this house, you can find a piano, an Xbox that has the red ring of death, and you can even find a Lamborghini in the garage. Once you leave the grocery store and walk down the left-hand side of the street, you can find this piece of wall graffiti that reads as follows: "Watchers of the skies, watchers of all." This is a reference to the rock band Genesis and their song, "Watcher of the Skies." The graffiti on the wall shows a man wearing an outfit with wings. This exact same outfit is worn by Peter Gabriel in the music video for Watcher of the Skies. After this, the survivors officially arrive at the Fort Point historic site. Before you head inside, you can find this piece of graffiti on the ground: "They said it was safe." And after you head inside, you can find this warning by the alarm door: "Alarm will sound. This building is currently being used by the US Army for containment of infection. This door has been rigged with an alarm for the safety of this building's occupants. If you wish to enter, please notify a nearby soldier standing outside and he'll be happy to help. If you or someone you know has contracted the green flu, please contact your local CETA department. The end of Chapter 2 is a gauntlet that's pretty hard. The infected will be swarming you from all sides, and there are plenty of line of sight breakers for the infected team. Now, let's head over to Chapter 3. Shortly after leaving the safe room, the survivors finally reach the Golden Gate Bridge, and this is easily my favorite chapter in the entire campaign. It's very similar to the bridge from the parish, but it's doubled in size and a lot more dangerous. There are guardrails, but the bridge also has a lot of holes, making it a prime location for instant kills. Once you reach the halfway point of the bridge and walk to the right hand side, you can find these 3 plaques. For those wondering, these 3 plaques are also real and can be found on the Golden Gate Bridge. Shortly after, the survivors realize that the bridge has been destroyed by a passing cruise ship. The group then uses a forklift to move a car and get on the boat. Before we head over to Chapter 4, there is one more thing that needs to be pointed out. If you look at the front of the cruise ship, you can see the name Francis. Once you board the cruise ship, you can find debris and cars that fell from the bridge. You can also find some wall graffiti that reads as follows: "Why doesn't it sink? The ship is a zombie too. Anybody left?" When you head inside the ship and check one of the cabins on the left-hand side, you can find a bathroom covered in blood. A chainsaw can be seen on the ground, and a pile of bodies can be seen inside the closet. Now, let's move on to Chapter 4. After reaching the top of the cruise ship, the survivors find a pool full of bodies, and after climbing a ladder, the survivors get back onto the Golden Gate Bridge. While walking on the bridge, you can find the sign that reads as follows: "Please, do not leave your vehicle under any circumstances." After this, the survivors enter a CETA trailer and hear 2 soldiers talking. The survivors then leave the CETA trailer, which triggers an alarm. You then have to fight the infected through the bridge and turn off the alarm. It's another solid event that poses quite the challenge. Be smart with your pipe bombs and you should be fine. After turning off the alarm, the survivors get off the Golden Gate Bridge and head down an elevator. When you reach the bottom, you can find another piece of wall graffiti: "Watcher of the skies, watcher of all." After walking through the door, the survivors see a helicopter flying overhead and decide to follow it. After walking up the street, we arrive at the Lime Point Lighthouse, another real-life location found in San Francisco. When you enter the lighthouse, you can find a safe room door on the ground, and dead bodies are seen everywhere. The survivors then take a nearby boat to Alcatraz Island. On the boat, you can find a radio that you can interact with, and once you get off the boat, we have some wall graffiti to break down. It's a trap. They'll let you on, but won't let you leave. Now, before we talk about this finale from a gameplay perspective, there is one more Easter egg that needs to be pointed out. Remember this gnome? Well, this little guy here is the key to unlocking this campaign's many secrets. Throughout the Daybreak campaign, you can find these red doors. These doors are locked at all times unless you bring the gnome with you. So, before we talk about Chapter 5, we're going to go back and unlock all of these doors and see what secrets they hide. Let's start with Chapter 1. After leaving the hotel, if you walk to the right side of the street, you find your first red door. Inside, you find another gnome and a keypad. The code for the keypad is 7691. You're probably wondering where I got this code, and I promise I will get to it later. When you punch in the code and open up the door, you find a flamethrower. Custom maps will sometimes throw custom weapons at you, and this is easily one of my favorites. The flamethrower also takes up your secondary weapon slot, so you can still carry around tier 2 weapons. The flamethrower is also very good at killing commons. This weapon is so much fun to use, and it's easily one of this campaign's best features. Now, let's head over to the end of Chapter 1. Right before you reach the Palace of Fine Arts, if you walk into this building on the right and head up the stairs, you find another red door, and after heading inside, you find a room full of gnomes. Sitting at a table, you can find these green pills, and after interacting with them, this happens. While under the effect of the green pill, you jump way higher in the air and the survivors will be hysterically laughing almost the whole time. Now let's head over to Chapter 2. When you reach the military base, a red door can be seen on the first floor, and after heading inside, you find another room full of gnomes. You can also find a map with red dots all over the world, and if you look on a table, you find a bong, and after you interact with it, this happens. This trip is very similar to the first one. You jump way higher, making it easier to traverse the map and dodge the infected. Now let's head over to Chapter 3. After getting onto the bridge, if you walk to the left-hand side, you find a truck with a red door, and after heading inside, you find even more gnomes and this on the table. After interacting with the mushrooms, this happens. During this trip, you have to collect 100 coins on a bridge. Instead of moon jumping, your movement speed is cranked through the roof and you get a smaller jump boost. Just be mindful and don't run off the bridge. After collecting all 100 coins, a rainbow road then spawns, and you can take it all the way to the end of the bridge. You can even bypass the forklift event by doing this. Also, before we move on, there is one more funny detail I forgot to mention. The gnomes will actually talk to you. Some of their lines are funny, other times it's very ominous and cryptic.
Some doors can't be closed once they've been opened. Be careful where you tread.
Now, let's head over to Chapter 4. After going down the maintenance elevator, you walk to the left-hand side and find another red door, and after going inside, you find a gnome who calls himself the Gatekeeper. After pulling a nearby lever, a portal then opens and the survivors head inside. The survivors then see a structure in the distance and head towards it. After taking a look around, it's obvious we're not in San Francisco anymore, so let's just call this place the Gnome Dimension. After heading inside, the survivors see a giant gnome sitting on a throne, and after walking down the stairs, the Gnome King will then say the following.
Oh, my son has returned home. Place him on the pedestal, and I will give you a reward.
After placing the gnome on the pedestal, you are then rewarded with the flamethrowers I showed in Chapter 1. On the table, you can find this 4-digit code, 7691, which is the code for the aforementioned door. Once you grab the flamethrower, this will happen.
And now fight for my amusement. Fight!
The survivors then have to fight off the infected hordes. This is a very long defend your position segment, but you have a ton of pills and medkits to make things easier. The area is also very wide open, so the infected aren't going to be catching you by surprise. After fighting off the infected hordes, the Gnome King will then say this to the survivors.
Oh, you're still alive. Well, shit. Yeah. Well, why don't you just get the fuck out of my castle? I'm bored with you.
And after walking down the stairs, you find the same gnome you met back in Chapter 1. The gnome will then say this to the survivors.
He just doesn't get me, man. I'm like a free spirit, dude. But you understand me. You understand me. The seeds of the apocalypse are planted with burning hellfire.
And after walking through a portal, the survivors return to San Francisco. Before we talk about the finale, however, there is one more gnome Easter egg that needs to be pointed out. When you reach Chapter 5 and head inside this building, you find another red door. Inside, you find a ton of supplies, another map, and this gnome sitting in front of some purple pills. When you walk inside of the room for the first time, the gnome will say this to you.
Who the fuck are you? Whoa. You guys are really tall. Oh, I'm dripping balls. You're really ugly.
And after you take the purple pills, the gnome will then say this.
It doesn't hit at first, but when it does, you're fucked. Get the fuck out of here.
Now, before we talk about the finale, here's another fun Easter egg. If you look past this fence, you can see a figure in the distance, and after going into NoClip and getting a closer look, you realize it's the G-Man, a character from the Half-Life series. Now, let's finally talk about Chapter 5. The survivors enter a nearby building and find a path to the rooftop. The survivors also find this piece of wall graffiti. My name is Gregory Lawson. I can't stand watching them do this anymore. It's not right. These people are all innocent. Carrier or not, I'm letting them out. I'm letting them all out. Alcatraz was used by CETA and the military to contain the infection, but the carriers were released from containment. Odds are they ended up infecting the survivors on the island, and Alcatraz was overrun by the infected. When you reach the rooftop, however, a helicopter pilot is heard talking to the survivors, and he says he can fly them out if the survivors fuel the helicopter. The finale of this campaign is solid. The survivors need to collect gas cans from the nearby cell blocks and fuel up the helicopter. There are plenty of staircases and ladders, making it easier to navigate the many floors of the cell block. In Versus mode, there are a ton of narrow hallways and small staircases, making them prime locations for ambush attacks. Before we end off the video, here's another fun Easter egg. Daybreak has 2 different endings. You get the first ending by playing through the campaign normally. The second ending can be achieved by taking the bottle of purple pills. If you take the pills and climb onto the roof, this will happen.
You shall pay for taking my son from me! Minions, attack!
During the finale, you will be attacked by zombies and an army of tiny gnomes. Custom maps are full of silly Easter eggs, but this one is up there for me. Fighting an army of gnomes on the rooftop of Alcatraz is the type of shit that is only possible in a Left 4 Dead custom map. After fighting off the infected hordes and the army of gnomes, the helicopter gets fueled up and the survivors fly away from Alcatraz, and that concludes the story behind Daybreak. This campaign checks almost every box. It has levels that are well designed, the environments and models look amazing, and most importantly, the map is fun. This is a fantastic custom map that is definitely worth playing. So, if I did miss something, or if you guys have anything to add, be sure to let me know down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.